tonight, David Agondo is a sign language interpreter.
The Directorate of Criminal Investigations has begun hunting for more suspects involved in the Riverside Drive terror attack.
A source who has spoken to NTV has said that the two prime suspects currently being held by police are helping detectives in unearthing what really happened before the attack.
Well, phone records show the two were in contact with the gunmen when they were inside the Riverside complex. NTV's investigative editor Dennis Okari with more.
As soon as the Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i announced the start of the second phase of the operation in the 14 Riverside Drive attack, detectives were dispatched to hunt for men believed to have been in communication with the gunmen holed up inside one of the buildings. The probe led them to Isli in Nairobi and Mushadha in Kiambu. Mushadha was home to one of the slain terrorists, where they collected fuses, wires, timers and other materials that had been disassembled. They believe these were to make bombs, but he abandoned the materials possibly due to lack of enough time to prepare. Police are following the trail of bank accounts of unnamed persons believed to have helped finance the operation, but are cagey on whether it was done in the country. Police also believe the house in Raqqa could have been used for planning, but are also looking into another residence the terrorists could have rented for Plan B in case their plans were unearthed before carrying out the attack. As the police continue with a debrief of what happened at 14 Riverside Drive, the interrogating officers are trying to establish from the suspects in custody whether the planning was done in the country or if the gunmen just came in for the execution. The origin of the plan and those who financed the attack are also being sought after, as detectives also look into who gave the command. The chain of command and how the terrorists communicated with each other is also being investigated. Those probing the incident believe they were not acting alone, but must have had leaders. Detectives are also following up on who was in charge of the operation, giving orders at the scene of crime and who else was working with them off-site. There are concerns about sleeper cells, and police are also trying to follow leads which cell the slain gunmen reported to. Dennis Okari, NTV.
There's more details emerging, and this is of the identities of key suspects of the 14 Riverside Drive attack that claimed the lives of 21 innocent individuals, and with NTV receiving information that sheds light on the lives of the individuals, the individuals lived, I should say.
Well, this morning, officers from the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit picked up terror suspect Ali Salim Gishunge's mother, Mariam Sakina, from her house in Isiolo.
NTV has also established that Violet Kemunto Nyamwea, Gishunge's wife, who was arrested in their Mushadha home, was a journalism student at the Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology. Here's
NTV's Leila Mohammed with more.
Detectives from the Anti-Terror Police Unit on Thursday morning took Maria Sakina into custody, the mother of Ali Salim Gishunge, alias Farouk Idris, the man who is believed to be a key point man in the 14 Riverside Drive attack Tuesday into Wednesday. Sakina, accompanied by one of her daughters, was first taken to Isiolo Police Headquarters before being transferred to Nairobi.
Kulingana na Manjina, amelelewa kwa hiyo familia ya wanajiita Wameru wa Nubi, ni kama Wanubi lakini ni Wameru pande ile nyingine.
Neighbors say that the family has lived in the area for a while and that their father was mostly absent, making Mariam the principal caregiver and breadwinner for the young man and his two sisters.
Aunge mlebo na chochote. Alikuwa tu ni yule mtu tu ule rafiki tu kuwa na town na amewahi kufanya kazi hata mali kadhaa town hii.
In Mombasa, Amina Salim says that Ali Salim Gishunge was her younger brother who studied in St. Paul's Secondary School in Isiolo. She remembers a disciplined boy growing up, but is saddened by the turn of events he took in his adult life.
Tulipokat communication, aliponiambia anasoma, hata mtoto akwambia anaenda kusomea dini, hauwezi muona amefanya kitu sarcastic ama sarcasm. Okay, kama umeamua kuchange somea dini, but unasoma aje? Akaniambia mimi nasomea online. Facebook yake yote ameweka University of sijui wapi anasoma online, iko kwa Facebook. So me I was like, iko kwa Facebook ni vile network hapa hakuna. Account yake nimeenda nimeona amedelete all the pictures, I don't know when.
Amina says that she was among those condemning the attack. However,
pia mimi hiyo news tu ilinitake na shock hivyo. Ala, ni ndugu yangu na ameingia huko. Okay, and I was condemning the act. So even kwa watu wanamlaani pia I was among the people who are condemning the act. Nilikuwa pia mimi namlaani yeye na ni ndugu yangu. So ningejua ako ndani ama ningejua watu wengine pia mimi singefurahi, unaona.
In Nyeri's Majengo slum, residents say that they remember a young man by the same name, but his engagement in crime was not as serious as what has been witnessed.
Faruk anajulikana sana kwa sababu lakini hakujulikana ati yeye ni mgaidi, alijulikana tu kama mwizi wa kawaida kwa sababu ndio walikuwa wanaiba watu simu. Na wakati walikuwa wanaiba watu simu hapa Majengo, wakati askari walikuwa serious, wamekuwa serious sasa na kudili na hawa wezi wa simu, yeye alitoweka.
Some residents in Majengo slum say Faruk, with whom which they claim they grew up with in the same town and went to Temple Road Primary School in Nyeri, was always in the company of 6 other young men. They were allegedly his close confidants. They also say he had relatives in Nakuru whom he would visit once in a while.
Alikuwa na wengine wanaitwa akina Gatahi, Mwaneki, wakabadilisha majina. Na walikuwa wametajwa wanaishi chani ya Rwaba, Kiawala, Wetemele na Burufari na hiyo Majengo. Hawa watu walikaa sana, siku hizi waonekanagi, lakini nasikia watu wakisema walienda kujiunga na kikundi ya Al-Shabaab.
And even though he was known locally as Faruk Juma, findings show that he used 4 other names. Ali Salim Gishunge was the name his mobile SIM card was registered under. Others acquainted to him knew him by the name Idris. This is Valet Kemunto Nyamoya Elias Khadija Odij. She is the alleged wife of Ali Salim Gishunge and was a student at the Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology, where she studied journalism and graduated in 2015 before marrying Salim in 2017. Those who knew her say she was a social person and a disciplined student. Those who are in class with her say they lost touch, but when they communicated last year, she said she was working at a mobile phone retailing shop in downtown Nairobi. Violet is being held by police officers after being picked up by officers at a house in Guango Estate, Mushadha, Tuesday night. In Wajir, residents say that they recognize one of the terrorists shot at the 14 Riverside Drive attack. This man, they say, worked as a mechanic in 2 garages in Bula Medina in Wajir town and lived in Bula Shalete. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
Right, well, as the shocking details continue to emerge, bomb disposal experts from the DCI, jointly with FBI agents, safely removed 4 explosives planted by terrorists at the Dusit D2 complex.
Police are combing through the evidence collected at the scene of crime, including CCTV footage, as investigations into the attack intensifies.
Police have arrested 3 suspects following the attack. NTV's Mel Miendo reports.
Investigations continued into the 3rd day after the 14 Riverside terrorist attack. Security agencies were leaving nothing to chance, combing every inch of the Dusit complex, and in the process discovered 4 unexploded explosives. Bomb experts conducted a stern detonation exercise to render the explosives ineffective before transportation for active detonation elsewhere. Detectives also dusted the silver Toyota Ractis car registration number KCN 340E used by the attackers. The vehicle was later removed from the scene.
What scenarios similar to this?
The Dusit D2 management says out of the 100 employees on duty during the day of the attack, 4 lost their lives while 3 are in hospital.
This tragic incident has brought so much grief and sorrow to the 14 Riverside community, to Dusit D2 family, and our beloved country, Kenya. Our heartfelt condolences go out to all the families and friends of those who have lost their loved ones, and we wish those who are injured full and speedy recovery. 14 Riverside Complex and Dusit D2 Hotel are currently closed until further notice.
The area leading to the Dusit D2 complex remains an active crime scene and is therefore inaccessible except to the relevant authorities. For those who had their personal belongings at the complex, they may have to wait for just a few more days for them to gain access. Mel Mwendo, NTV at the 14 Riverside Drive.
Tonight, one of the survivors of the terrorist attack narrates how he narrowly escaped by hiding in an air-conditioned vent.
Charles Mukinyo, an employee at LG Electronics situated at 14 Riverside Drive, pours praise on his now slain colleague James Radido, alias Cobra, for helping save many lives even as he lost his own. NTV's
Seth Olale visited Mukinyo, who is slowly recovering from the horrific events of that dark Tuesday.
Under the cover of the flashing lights of an ambulance, paramedics attend to 23-year-old Charles Mukinyo. He was safely evacuated from one of the buildings in the 14 Riverside Drive complex after hours of sitting under the breath and jaws of terror. The terrorist attack caught the LG Electronics customer care officer completely unawares as he worked on the third floor of the Hanover building. His horrifying experience with terror had a face to it, that of one of the gun-wielding terrorists.
Wasi wakaanza kusema wakatuambia tutromke tutoke chini ya building at least no kama ni mtu tuchome. Alafu saa tukiwa huko kushuka chini sasa like guns too.
48 hours later, we met Charles recovering at home. Still seemingly shaken, he narrates to us how he and two others hid inside an air conditioner vent on the roof ceiling.
The first thing alikuwa anafanya, msi anapita, anashute, alikuwa ana create discomfort kwa wase, anashoot. But that ndio nilikuwa nasema like understanding yangu mi kuna ile part unapata like unakuwa courageous hadi unaona like akipita unamwona like umse like hako interested kunikuwa leo. Unaona like amepita anaenda omoni amerudi. Unasikia mwingine amepita. Uko like yani unaona hai ni hard. Unaona like nilikuwa na hiyo idea umse ni nani ile time tulikuwa huko first floor. Nimemwona na ka safety jacket ka green na koka hizo Kevlar materials ka green. Lakini sasa mimi nilikuwa na expect hizi gas zao zinazaisha hizo tulisasi tot na so tukifika hapo hivyo tukaambia hii ceiling tunaweza ingia ndani lakini mjue hiyo ceiling si strong, so try kuangalia kama hii ni wall, side ya wall ndio unaweza simama ama unaweza lala hapo. Hapo ndo sasa ilikuwa shida kidogo juu saa like una try kushikilia ceiling lakini the first things unaona ni hizo kuna tuchuma tumeshikanisha lakini ni weak. So ukishikilia inaanza kutremka so unaacha trace. Unaona? So uko fast at least tukanyangane kwa pande ingie at least tukue safe kwanza. Hizo zingine tutazivuruta tukiwa juu at least ceiling ni the same.
However, his friend and colleague James Radido, popularly known as Cobra, who to them was a hero in the ordeal, was shot dead.
Radido alini welcome LG na kama like a great parent, alini welcome kama brother yake. Aliniambia alikuja ananiambia hakuwa ananiita Charles, alikuwa ananiita Mchinku. Alikuwa ananiambia like Mchinku fanya kazi. Like anakuja ananiambia Mchinku fanya kazi kwa bidii. Hakikisha Mchinku kila kitu unajua.
Of the tense LG Electronics staff who were on the 3rd and 4th floors of the Hanover building, James Radido, aka Cobra, is the only one who never made it out alive. Charles says he has been experiencing nightmares.
Sasa hapo mimi nilipotea akili kabisa, sikujijua. Mimi nilijisikia tu nasikia watu wengi wanaongea, nasikia wasema we are good people now, this is police. Kufungua na giza asema, umsi labda amejificha. Unajua ukiwa place unaona kama anajificha tu pale hivi. Yaani niko na hapana.
Even as Charles looks to going for professional counseling, he says that being with his loved ones is helping him a lot as they are walking the recovery path with him. Seth Olale, NTV.
What a harrowing experience, and so brave of Charles to share that with the nation. We wish him well.
And certainly hope he gets the help that he requires.
Well, the terror attack at the Dusit D2 has robbed an old man of his surviving son. Mzee Zakaria Amusala lost his son, a CCTV camera system controller at the hotel, the only child he had after previously losing his 2 other daughters.
The deceased Dedrix Lemisi is, however, credited with saving lives before falling to the terrorist's gun that fateful Tuesday. Brenda Wanga reports on the sorrow of the family of one of the selfless heroes in the terror attack.
Relatives of the late Dedrix Lemisi slowly make their way into the Chiromo mortuary to perform a task so tragically thrust upon them, that of identifying their kin. His body brought here Wednesday morning in the aftermath of the Dusit D2 attack. Until his death, Dedrix was in charge of manning the CCTV controls at the hotel, a position he had held since 2014. His wife, now widowed by the act of terror, says her husband left home on Tuesday in a prayerful mood.
Bui kawaida alipoamuka nikamwandaa ili akaondoke, akaniambia nikuje tuombe, akaomba na tukaachana na yeye.
Little did he and her 2 children of the 4 they shared knew that that was their final goodbye. Hours later, news that would change their lives came through.
Baadaye tukaenda nikampata, alipigwa risasi, akawa ameaga.
His aging father, Mzee Musala, made his way from Kakamega to the capital to confirm for himself that his second-born child and the only surviving one is indeed no more.
Hii ni changa kubwa sana, ni huzuni mwingi sana. It's very painful. Na kwa sababu kifo kiko na kikikuja lazima tuombe Mungu atusaidie.
While they grieve their loss, the family of the deceased Dedrix take comfort from the knowledge that right before he was felled by the terrorist's bullet, he had saved quite a number of lives from the besieged building. According to those who witnessed the attack, Dedrix had, in line with his duty, shielded a group of guests as he guided them out of the hotel when the attack began. It was his second mission of mercy that cost him his life.
Kuna mmoja ambaye amepaki ndani, naye ni mwanamke. Kwa sababu kazi yake ni kuokoa, akaona lazima arudi achukue huyo. Aliporudi huko kuchukua huyo, ndio alikutana na risasi akiwa ameshamchukua, anajaribu kumwokoa. Wote wawili walikuishia hapo.
Aliumizwa. Alikuwa amepigwa risasi hapa kwa kifua na alikuwa anatoka damu mapua na mdomo. Akiwa tu ndani ya uniform ya kazi.
For Mzee Musala, this act of terror has hit him hard. He lost his firstborn daughter just last August, and his lastborn daughter died earlier in 2006. Dedrix was the only son he had left from his first marriage.
Mara ya mwisho kuongea na yeye ilikuwa last week. Ndio alinipigia simu akiniuliza matanga ya mchomba yake.
The widow now ponders a life without a husband, her provider. A father, long retired, has to re-strategize and seek ways of providing for his son's children. A family now all too familiar with the real human cost of terrorism. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
And we say pole sana to Mzee Musala and Mama Lemisi, and the family does appeal for any help that they can get. As you can see, he's left or survived with children and the family to take care of. So if any help can come, we welcome the same. And selflessness describes him, as well as describes Sena Chabari, who has been a volunteer at the Chiromo funeral parlor. Chabari put aside her own injury to counsel family and friends of victims of the terror attack.
Well, she spent her day washing the feet of tens of mourners as she tried to connect with them for guidance. She's been working closely with other volunteers from the Kenya Red Cross who have now confirmed that the 14 unaccounted people have been identified.
Tears that need little explanation. Another family confirming their worst fears for yet another day. Families and friends were at the Chiromo funeral parlor to identify bodies of their kin. According to the Red Cross, the 14 unaccounted for people were finally identified and the cases closed. That opened another daunting task of healing the bereaved families. For 2 days, volunteers have been available to offer their much-needed help. Sena Chabari's assistance is different from the others. Chabari offers to wash the feet of mourners, understanding all too well the toll of waiting under the hot January sun, the anxiety and the anguish.
What prompted me to come is that I felt people are hurting emotionally. I may not have so much to offer, but just being there, just offering that tender touch, just hugging them and telling them the words of encouragement to help them move on and giving them hope that this is not the end of life, that life will move on.
Chabari, who is a facilitator with the Bible Society of Kenya, is also a counselor, and her bandaged leg does not give her the agility of the other volunteers.
I slipped off and I hurt my ankle, but I felt I need to come even in the situation because people around here are hurting more than me. And physical wound is more or less compared to heart wound and emotional wound. So I felt I need to come even in this situation. Yeah, and I'm strong for them.
She came well prepared for the selfless task. Even though not every individual was ready for the foot massage, Chabari's tender touch and calming words appeared to relax the bereaved.
One is just a tender touch, just massage them and speak to them words of encouragement with the scripture, Psalms 134, verse 7, that he heals the brokenhearted and he binds their wounds. And also I felt compelled to just wash their feet. I've washed a few, of course, at the background because I didn't want to expose them to embarrassment, but those who are willing, I did wash their feet.
The rest of the volunteers never stopped working for the suffering families.
It's been hectic, it's been different. This is my first time actually responding to something like this, so it's been a learning experience. Being able to give back to the community and other Kenyans and just serving my country and serving my people.
The Red Cross says more than 500 people have received counseling and will continue to offer to any individual in need. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
Oh, what a way to try and make a difference and to contribute to such a situation. So many times, so many of us feel so helpless, but how creative.
Using your hands, what's in their hands, and that gesture, service to many. And yes, there is many who will still need help, whether it's counseling or even material. And if you can, please come forward. And also those who are getting treatment, I'm sure your help in the form of blood donations would be received.
All right, we are taking a quick break now on NTV Tonight, but do stay with us. As always, there is much more. Majengo area in the outskirts of Nyeri town is increasingly bearing links to terrorism in the country, with the latest reference being the Tuesday attack.
Investigations point in the direction of Nyeri's Majengo slums, where one suspect, identified as Ali Salim Gishunge alias Farouk Idris, is said to have lived.
Well, while details into his roots continue to unfold, more troubling details into the Nyeri link with terror have emerged, with the security bosses admitting they are not surprised by the alleged connection.
Melita Oletenges takes us to Nyeri's Majengo.
The Majengo slums at the outskirts of Nyeri town sit unsuspectingly to the naked eye, but therein lies what is appearing to be a growing breeding ground and hideout for terrorists. Ali Salim Gishunge, alias Farouk, one of the terrorists who was killed in the 14 Riverside Drive attack in Nairobi, is said to have lived here just a month before the deadly attack, according to sources who requested anonymity.
Farouk anajulikana sana kwa sababu, lakini hakujulikana ati yeye ni mgaidi. Alijulikana tu kama mwizi wa kawaida kwa sababu ndio walikuwa wanaiba watu simu. Na wakati walikuwa wanaiba watu simu hapa Majengo, wakati askari walikuwa serious, wamekuwa serious sasa na kudeal na hawa wezi wa simu, yeye alitoweka.
While details into the roots of the slain terrorists continue to unfold, more troubling details into the Nyeri link with terror have emerged, with a possible radicalization exercise right here in Majengo slums.
Hiyo watu walikuwa wametajwa wakiwa watu 6. Hawa watu walikaa sana, siku hizi waonekanaji, lakini nasikia watu wakisema walienda kujiunga na kikundi ambayo ya Al-Shabaab. Vijana dogo ni wengi sana, na wasipofuatwa tutakuwa na shida kubwa sana.
This is not the first time Nyeri is being linked to the Madras terrorists. On May 26, 2018, students at the Nyeri campus of Kenya Medical Training College were forced to flee the institution premises after receiving reports of an imminent attack there. 2 days later, detectives who were following leads on the threat arrested 2 people in Othaya. They had been linked to the botched attack.
Vijana ndio walikuwa na monitor. Wanaenda wanaangalia vile kunakaa, wanaenda kwa hiyo institution, wanaangalia venye inakaa, wana monitor. Wewe unafikiria tu wanaenda kuibia watu simu, na kuna kitu ile wana monitor.
According to Nyeri County Commissioner Frederick Shisia, some of the slum areas in Nyeri could have been used as hideouts by Al-Shabaab terrorists and sympathizers.
This is a matter that we've been pursuing. This country normally has sleeper cells of terrorist activities. In all these towns of the country, we have them. And Nyeri is not an exception.
Nyeri has been home to many casualties in most attacks in northern Kenya, but in the last few years, the narrative seems to be changing from victim to host. Besides being a hideout, Nyeri is becoming a key transit point, which investigators believe could be an important strategizing point for terror attacks.
Still connected to this attack, and this is in reaction to the coverage by international media. The Media Council of Kenya has given the New York Times and its Nairobi bureau chief, Kimiko D. Freitas Tamura, up to Friday morning to pull down a publication deemed offensive from its website and issue a non-conditional apology or risk deregistration and withdrawal of accreditation to operate in the country.
Well, the New York Times, an American publication, published pictures of the dead alongside injured victims of the attack at the Dusit complex. And Ken Majungu reports that Kenyans on Twitter are furious with the publication.
An apology that never was. It was masked in professional language and punctuated with vague explanations of objectivity and responsibility. This smoked out the Media Council of Kenya and it's direct with its demands. The letter, signed by the Council's Chief Executive Officer David Omoyo and addressed to the Nairobi Bureau Chief, demands in part that the New York Times pulls down the insensitive pictures within the next 24 hours and make an unconditional apology on the matter. Further, MCK says in the event the pictures are not pulled down within 24 hours as requested, MCK will initiate relevant action against the publication, not limited to revocation or suspension of the accreditation of journalists working with the New York Times in the country. The Foreign Correspondents Association of East Africa has voiced concerns over the social media attacks targeting the New York Times and its journalists. The association is condemning what it terms as extreme aggression and personal attacks through social media against the journalist for the photographs selected not by her but by her editors in New York and used alongside her reporting. Kimiko, who is the journalist, unsuccessfully attempted to explain herself to the angry social media users who demanded she pulls down the pictures. In her defense, she stated that she was not responsible for the pictures picked by her publication, but the users could hear none of it, asking her to use her powers as incoming bureau chief to pull down the pictures. New York Times would then come to her defense, tweeting their own response to the outrage. The tweet read, "We have heard from some readers upset with our publishing a picture showing victims after the brutal attack in Nairobi. We understand how painful this coverage can be, and we try to be very sensitive in how we handle both words and images in these situations." By the time of going on air with this story, nothing more regarding this controversy was forthcoming. The New York Times had not pulled down the pictures, firmly standing its ground. The social media users had celebrated the suspension of New York Times photo tweet account, something that did not happen as the page remains active. In fact, in its demand letter to Kimiko, the Media Council of Kenya had also referred to the apparent suspension that never was. The New York Times has until Friday morning to pull down the photos or face sanctions. The paper also has until next week on Monday to inform the council of its actions. Ken Mijungu, NTV.
Well, here is, in fact, a response by Phil Corbett. He is the Associate Managing Editor for Standards at the New York Times. He responded to David Omoyo, the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya. And it is a rather lengthy letter, but briefly, he says that he wanted to respond directly to the letter, raising serious concerns about the photo published in the news account of the fatal attack in Nairobi. He says that, firstly, the decision was not made by the main reporter, that is Kimiko de Freitas Tamura, or by any New York Times journalists on the scene in Nairobi. He goes on to say that we recognize that coverage of a terrible event like this can be very painful to those affected, and we try always to be sensitive and thoughtful in how we handle both the words and images in these situations. But as journalists, we also believe it is important to give our readers around the world a clear picture of the horror of an attack like this. This often includes showing pictures that are not sensationalized, but that give a real sense of the terrible situation. It goes on to say that they do try to consider the same factors wherever in the world something like this happens. And then he makes some clarifications that Twitter did not suspend an account associated with the New York Times. And it ends by saying, again, we are very sympathetic to the pain of those affected in Nairobi, and we understand that many reasonable people disagree with our decision to publish these photos, but I hope to assure you that we take this responsibility seriously and are guided by our mission to help readers see and understand the world. So that response coming from Phil Corbett, the Associate Managing Editor for Standards at the New York Times, to David Omoyo, the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya. All right, for now, let's shift focus and bring you other news stories making headlines today. Celicio Karanja, a former secretary of the National Youth Service Tender Committee, will spend the next 4 years in prison or pay a 4 million shilling fine. Karanja was today found guilty of fraudulent practice in procurement by a Nairobi court. The Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi handed down the sentence, terming Karanja's crime as a betrayal of public trust. The former NYS employee manipulated the procurement of goods. Karanja is the only accused person in the 2015 NYS scandal who has been convicted, as the other accused, including former Devolution PS, that's Peter Mangiti, was acquitted by Chief Magistrate Kennedy Bedali for lack of sufficient evidence. The second NYS scam trial involving the former Youth PS Lillian Omolo and former NYS Director General Richard Ndubai began on Monday at the Milimani Law Courts.
This expression by Senior Counsel James Orengo says it all on what was going on earlier today. Accusations of a misrepresentation of the facts were traded this morning as the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu's counsel faced off in the High Court. At the center of it all was Queen's Counsel Kawar Qureshi, who sat quietly by as the two sides debated his future involvement in a case in which the DCJ is a defendant. The continued involvement of Senior Counsel James Orengo and Okongo Omogeni in the case is also up for determination, with the DPP accusing them of unethically seeking to prosecute the case both in court and in the Senate where they sit.
My lord, he will have the right of response. We should let her just...
Now what I'm saying, if a deliberate lie is being told, we can't sit here. We can't sit here and allow you to misrepresent what is in the handset.
Accusations and counter-accusations of skewing the facts to suit an alternate version of events were made on Thursday morning when the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu's counsel once again found themselves on opposing sides.
I had worked with Senior Counsel James Orengo before we began, and the indication was they never intended to file any written submissions.
I think it's unfair to me that he approaches me to have a gently talk. It's like he's trapping me. Had he made me aware that his purposes were not honest, I would have declined to talk to him.
And through it all, the man at the center of the dispute uttered no more than a whispered word for the duration of the proceedings.
Why has he been denied the right to address the court in those circumstances? Before the applicant has discharged the legal or evidentiary burden.
The DCJ's counsel seeking to stop him from acting for the state in the Mwilu matter on the grounds that he holds no work permit, does not qualify for one, and that his appointment was irregular as it does not comply with the public procurement principles, all of which went contested by the Office of the DPP and the State Law Office. The future participation of Senior Counsel James Orengo and Okongo Omogeni in the matter is also in dispute, with the Office of the DPP citing a conflict of interest given their participation in the Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights Committee of the Senate.
Although we should allow the two senators, they shall be barred from sitting on the Senate committees in the life of these proceedings. How do you react to that?
For lack of a better word, the evil choice open to them is this: either stay out of these proceedings or stay out of the parliamentary committee. It cannot be both.
The court cannot bar a senator from representing the people in parliament. I think that would be a breach of the sovereignty of the people that he represents. That is not even open to a court. Quite apart from the fact that proceedings in Parliament are immune from the jurisdiction.
The court will rule on Qureshi and Orengo's active participation in the Mwilu matter next week on Thursday.
Elsewhere, the just concluded Council of Governors elections have created factions within the county chief's umbrella body. Kwale Governor Salim Mvurya has refused to recognize the new leadership of the council, terming the process that brought them into office as a coup. NTV's political affairs reporter Kennedy Muredi has that report.
Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya's tenure at the helm of the Council of Governors Executive Committee may just have gotten off to a rocky start, with some of his colleagues questioning the process that got him to the prestigious position. All was well on Elections Day as the county chiefs emerged after lengthy deliberations behind closed doors.
The chairperson is His Excellency Wycliffe Ambesa Oparanya. The vice chair is His Excellency Mwangi Wairia. And the chief whip is His Excellency Honorable Professor Kibutha Kibwana.
But that announcement seems not to have settled well with everybody, with some now questioning its legitimacy.
According to me, we did not have to go for elections. The Council of Governors in 2017 pronounced itself. I think you have the clips. And there was supposed to be transition from that leadership to a new leadership. So I think I'm also, like you, I'm questioning the integrity of Council of Governors to make a position and vacate its position to take another position.
Mvurya did not participate in the elections when he realized the deal brokered in 2017 had been set aside. The current office holders are laughing off their colleagues' arguments.
Kama unataka kiti, unaweza kutakaje kiti na uko nyumbani, unakunywa chai na mama. Sasa utawezaje?
Lakini ningependa kuambia ile gavana amesema hivyo kwamba wakati tuna boycott elections, kama vile mkurugenzi mwingine aliboycott elections, uchaguzi itaendelea kama huko ama huko.
Sources within the council tell NTV the outburst by Mvurya has exposed the existence of two factions in the Council of Governors. One group feels shortchanged after the elections, whose outcome may have reflected the wishes of the majority, but the minority feel it was a coup. Governors who participated in the elections say their motive was to effect necessary change, and the decision not to give Turkana Governor Josephat Nanok another term was thought through.
The council took a decision to change strategy. And because they decided to change the strategy, they needed to change the faces of the people who will implement that strategy. It's going to be a bit different this year.
Members of COG waliangalia wakaona watu mwaka moja watatusaidia sana. Kwa sababu pesa ya county inachelewa kama kawaida. Kama ni maneno ya kubageni ile project ambayo ilikuwa supposed kuwa devolved pia inalala. Wakaambiwa pio box work.
The question on why only Bomet Governor Joyce Laboso made it to the executive committee out of the three women governors has caused heat within the council.
It's unfortunate that at this point we don't have in the executive committee a lady. We are very few, but as time goes, we will get there.
When the three governors were elected, the three women were elected, they were elected as governors. They were not elected as women. Yeah, they were elected as governors. Those who want to be elected as women go for the women rep seat.
The new office holders now want their colleagues to stop the sideshows and join them in delivering on their mandate. Kennedy Muredi, NTV.
Well, let's hope there will not be any camps or fallout in the new formed PSC. Chief Justice David Maraga has urged the Public Service Commission to hold public officers to account while promoting national values in the delivery of services to the public. While presiding over the swearing-in of the 8 new members to the commission, Maraga asked them to put the interest of the public first. Charity Kisotu was sworn in as a vice chairperson of the commission. PSC chairperson Stephen Kirogo has urged the new commissioners to work towards creating solutions to the current high rate of youth unemployment, as well as poor performance and low productivity in the public service.
The country expects that during your tenure at the helm, the youth unemployment challenge, poor performance by the public service, low productivity and entrenchment of high ethical standards will find solutions.
You have to call the public officers to account. You have at the same time to motivate them to be able to work. You are required to promote the national values and ensure that the public employees live by those values in the service delivery to the people.
All right, and now it is time to shift focus to the business news. Dan Mwangi is leading that agenda after this break.
Good evening and welcome to NTV Business. I'm Dan Mwangi. Now, the need for insurance against terrorism is always brought to the fore whenever incidences such as Tuesday's attack at 40 Riverside Drive take place. As businesses at the Dusit complex begin to take stock of the losses incurred following the incident, we sought to understand where the country stands in as far as provision of insurance cover is concerned.
The Association of Kenya Insurers, up to 1.8 billion shillings was paid out in compensation following the 2013 Westgate terror attack. It is indicative of the cushion that businesses are afforded if they have insurance against terrorism. The association says the industry has come a long way in developing this product.
Initially, we had a problem of reinsurance support. The local reinsurers were willing to help us, but the international reinsurers were reluctant. The likes of Swiss Re, the like of Munich Re, but now the cover is fully supported by insurers.
In Tuesday's attack, a lot of property was destroyed and several vehicles set on fire. We sought to understand how a business should go about securing an insurance cover against terrorism so as to cushion itself against losses through such incidences.
If you have a property, first of all, you insure that property. You insure it against fire or you insure the content. Then from that particular primary cover, you extend that cover to include damages that can be caused by terrorism acts. Because ordinarily, if that is not bought back, then it doesn't cover.
Terrorism is a growing challenge across the globe, and as the state tightens security measures to address its rising risk, businesses and citizens will be compelled to give greater consideration to the extent their insurance cover can cushion them against such risks. Julians Amboko, NTV.
The woes facing the sugar sector continue to persist after a section of farmers expressed dissatisfaction with the replacement of the Mumias Sugar Company managing director, 7 months into his appointment, describing his replacement as unqualified to head the troubled company. This happens as sugarcane farmers across the country revolted against participating in a government task force meant to address issues facing the sugar sector unless they are paid their arrears. Lillian Carrier with more of the details.
Over the last decade, sour tides seem to have rocked the sweetener's boat. And the future stands on shaky grounds, with farmers expressing lack of confidence in the appointment of Isaac Shewunda to replace Patrick Chebosi as the managing director in acting capacity of the debt-ridden Mumea Sugar Company that has been closed over the last 9 months.
You want to revive Mumea Sugar Company, you have to talk to the outgrower institutions who are the specialists in cane development. But this has never happened.
This happens as the reforms process ordered by President Kenyatta in hopes of reviving the sugar sector was halted after farmers in various regions turned hostile, demanding payment of the 2.6 billion shillings which is owed to them.
I harvested my cane in Nzoia, March last year, 2018. I have not been paid to date. My mother harvested her cane in Nzoia, October 2017. She has not been paid. How do you eradicate poverty?
Some farmers have also expressed displeasure with the composition of the president's task force, poking holes into whether it stands a chance in resolving any of the farmers' pressing issues.
They then used the millers to be the conveners. Now, in this industry, there are two protagonists, millers and growers. Yes. Now, it tells you that even the government itself does not know who are the farmers' leaders. Because then the task force would have used farmers' leaders to be the conveners. Because this is about farmers.
Lillian Kiarie, NTV Business.
Retailers may soon be required to pay their suppliers within a specified period of time once new proposals on prompt payments by retailers to suppliers that have been agreed upon by stakeholders take effect. This should help eliminate the prevailing situation where suppliers owe retailers tens of billions of shillings because they are not compelled to pay the money. Victor Kiprop attended the launch of the Retail Code of Practice and now breaks down what it means for the retail industry.
Under the new code signed by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the Association of Kenyan Suppliers, the Retail Trade Association of Kenya, and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, retailers will be required to honor payment agreements with their suppliers, failure to which they risk sanctions by a proposed 7-member dispute resolution committee.
We are trying to be proactive, making sure that we prevent the situation where we accumulate more pending bills in the future by addressing the things that have caused us to accumulate so much. If after 1 month you don't pay, then we have signal and we can come in. It's not like previously where we just waited until we are told it is now this much. We didn't have a mechanism to know. Now we know.
According to the State Department of Trade, the new agreement aims to reduce cases of suppliers going under due to delayed payments by retailers and will only take effect once the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives publishes the National Trade Policy. Suppliers did not, however, get all that they wanted in the new launched Code of Practice. The document does not specify a given number of days within which the retailers should have paid, but instead refers to the agreement made between the supplier and the retailer.
You want the commercial contracts to be respected, and we want this power to rest between the supplier and the retailer. Why would we want to impose as a government to say you must pay on 7 days if they have agreed on 20 days or whatever? That is their commercial transaction, and we should never interfere.
As at December 2017, a report by the Ministry of Trade indicated that retailers owed suppliers more than 40 billion shillings, even as the industry battled a turbulence that left retail giants Uchumi and Nakumatt supermarkets on the verge of collapse. Victor Kiprop, NTV Business, Nairobi.
The Task Force on Maize is proposing the restructuring of the National Cereals and Produce Board and the Strategic Food Reserve Fund in a bid to reduce the government's influence in these organizations. The task force was in Nakuru and Nyandarua counties as they wound up a 3-day public participation session with farmers on what ails maize production in the country.
In this last round of engagement with farmers, the maize task force was confronted with accounts of how farmers are having it rough in producing the country's staple food.
Tungemwomba rais yetu atuongezee anga ikuwe 2,300 ama 3,200. Hapo ndio mkulima ataona achambo amesaidiwa.
Serikali inatuchukulia mahindi kutoka Brazil, kutoka Mexico, na hiyo sehemu ni sehemu ambazo zinatoka mahindi ya GMO. na sisi hapa tunakula lakini hatukubalishwi kulima.
From a flooded market with foreign maize, brokers, poor market price and high taxes on farm inputs, Kenya is one of the African countries with the highest maize production costs. But the task force seems to have a solution.
We are recommending warehousing system, warehousing system, where the maize will be held and released as and when the demand is good. And there are times also farmers can also cause prices to increase once they are together.
The task force believes that maize production should be standardized, with farmers being encouraged to form cooperatives that would help them push their product in bulk and in a sense cushion them from the currently harsh conditions. Bridget Ngana, NTV, Nakuru.
Police officers in Eldoret town have arrested 4 people suspected of being part of a syndicate that has been deceiving maize farmers that they are buying maize on behalf of the World Food Programme. According to Eldoret West OCPD Zachary Bitok, the 4 had so far received over 700 bags of maize from farmers from Ziwa with a promise that they would be paid in a week's time. They were offering 3,000 shillings per bag, which is 500 shillings more than what the government is currently offering.
Farmers here in Western Gishu are desperate. So anything which is likely to give them a relief in terms of paying school fees or rather paying their bills, farmers are willing to give out their maize. So in this case we are investigating a haul of about 700 or even more, which are now in the hands of conmen. We are appealing to the public, despite the desperate situation they are in, let them investigate where they are selling their maize.
Now, the push to reduce the age limit of motor vehicles for import from 8 to 5 years will not affect cars with engine capacities of 1.5 litres or less. Industry, Trade and Cooperative CS Peter Munya has clarified that the measure, which is meant to boost the local manufacturing industry, will only apply to higher capacity vehicles. The government is keenly aware that if the move to reduce the age limit for all motor vehicles is applied, it could result in the pricing out of a big swath of the country's middle class. It deems those who intend to buy vehicles with bigger engine capacities to have the financial muscle to adjust to the anticipated spike in prices later in the year. The Capital Markets Authority has extended the suspension from trading of Deacons East Africa by 10 days. Now, this follows the appointment of joint administrators by the board of the company to run its business in accordance with the Insolvency Act. The extension of the suspension takes effect tomorrow. The original suspension notice was issued on the 21st of November 2018 and was for a period of 40 days, effective November 19th, 2018. The Nairobi Securities Exchange this morning notified shareholders, investors and the general public of the extension through a public notice. Business is done, so am I. Good night.